Hello and welcome to Her Matters. I am your host. My name is Chioma Omero.
Culture of silence. Again, silence, because if you even try to say, oh, he did this to me, she did this to me, people then say, where's your proof? Are you sure?
Now, what I've seen is parents are not talking to their daughters and their sons. They are not talking to them. So when
people now think that if someone in the medical profession or in healthcare or in that field carries out the process, it would be safer.
The other part of it is the way we structured our healthcare system to actually selectively, remove these pager dimension vendors out of the entire health loop. We don't officially recognize them, but there's a significant role they have to play.
Hello and welcome to Her Matters. I am your host. My name is Chioma Omero. Her Matters is a talk show series that focuses on pressing issues affecting women across the world. Now today our topic is focusing on family planning as life planning. And with us in the studio are two of our guests, one joining us physically here and the other one joining us virtually. Please help me welcome Yvonne Victor-Ojomu and Onyinye Edeh. Joining us virtually is Onyinye Edeh. Yes. And she is the officer for Anglophone Africa with the Family Planning 2030 Partnership. Did I get that right?
Correct. Global partnership.
Yes, global partnership. I had to practice and get that in my head. And thank you for being here. Onyinye. Thank you for your time. And then next we have Yvonne, Victor, somebody I met, and first time I met her, I was actually so full of energy. She's my kind of person. Yvonne Victor-Ojomu, who's the program director, CEO of the Herbert Wigwe Foundation. That gives us this beautiful space where we have been doing all of these recordings. Welcome, Yvonne, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chida. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. So, I'm going to just dive right in. I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions because what we're talking about today is family planning and life planning as life planning. So I'm going to have a couple of questions we're going to ask back and forth, and I'll get both of your perspectives as we go along for each question. Is that okay? And we'll be out of your hair as soon as we can. I think we'll start, since you're in the studio. Well, let's talk about you, what you've done, what you do, and your relationship to our topic for today.
Okay, so I've been introduced already, so I'll just save us that time. I work for the HOW Foundation, Herbert, Wigwe Foundation, and we're in the social impact space. So we do intervention in health, empowerment, mostly catering to youth, and education. We've done extensive work in those areas, and our passion really, is to see how we can intervene in underserved communities. When we say underserved communities, we don't mean like, of course, we know, what we are faced with in terms of, economic, hardship. Underserved for us also includes those who actually yearn for a kind of opportunity or service, and they don't get it because even though those opportunities may exist, but they don't have access. So it could only be, our regular, young people who seem to be from, in quotes, well-off homes, but they're not being served, based on, what their aspirations are. So we pride ourselves, in that, and it's very interesting that we talk of family planning, even though it's not one of our core objectives, but it kind of weaves through because we're looking at opportunities where we can get people more enlightened as to how they can plan their lives, within their resources and get the best out of it.
Amazing.
So basically, what we do is what I've just said. My own role is, to coordinate all these three major programs, create projects for it, and then basically, manage the operations of the whole organization.
Excellent.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Onyinye, so let's get to you. So, and you are the officer for Anglophone Africa, which English-speaking Africa, for those people who don't know what Anglophone means, English-speaking Africa with the Family Planning 2030 Partnership. So please tell us a bit about that and your role in that organization.
Yes, thank you so much, Chioma, and thank you for having me on this show. So as you said, I am Onyinye Edeh, and I work with the Family Planning 2030 Global Partnership. We are the only global partnership that's focused on family planning. And what we do basically, we mobilize and drive commitments at all levels. So at the community level, at the national level, at the global level, commitments that advance women and girls' access to modern family planning. And we also collect and disseminate data. We are like a one-stop shop for synthesized data on family planning globally, nationally as well. And we also work with advocates at all levels, at the community, national, global level, to hold their governments accountable. So we advance accountability through the partnership. And then one of the last things that we do is that we collaborate. We collaborate and we convene different stakeholders around the world. We try to get the right people at the right time to ensure that we're making progress when it comes to advancing family planning. And I am speaking to you from the DC office.
Oh.
Yes, in the USA. But we are a global partnership, so we are actually just opening up offices in Africa. We will also have an office in Asia and also in the Latin America and Caribbean region.
Nice, nice. Thank you so much. That's so amazing. So now what I'm going to do is go right back to you again, Onyinye, because my next question was really talking about, because we're dealing with family planning as life planning, right? So we wanted to sort of like, because of how the conversation, when it comes to family planning, how the conversations always seem to sort of go left because of maybe mostly lack of information. Can you just expatiate on that perspective of family planning as life planning?
Yes, thank you so much. And I know that with the young audience, when you talk about families, they begin to like, oh my goodness, like I'm not ready to start a family. But really, it is about your life. Our families are, that's where our lives start, from your family units. So when we talk about family planning, we're just talking about how do you set out your life the way you want it to go? So family planning in itself refers to a woman's ability to choose if and when she becomes pregnant. So we know that a lot of young people are getting pregnant in their teenage years and they're not ready for these pregnancies. So how do we work with these young people to understand reproductive health, to understand sexuality, to understand how do you prepare yourself and understand the responsibilities and consequences that come with your sexual decisions. So yes, so for young people, it's really about your life in the sense that once a girl gets pregnant, it alters her life, especially, and even women as well, if you're not ready for it. So, and for the guys as well, I know we will engage guys later, or like we'll talk more about engaging men, but even for a man or young man, if you get a girl pregnant and both of you are not ready for it, it does impact your life. We talk about the mental health consequences, the financial consequences, even the emotional consequences. So really, family planning is life planning for young people. We know you're not ready to start a family. So how do you start making decisions and accessing services that will ensure you don't get a family that you don't want?
Thank you so much for saying that. And it's weird how you sort of like delved into where I was, because I was going to give this question to Yvonne, because she deals with young people, especially because of they're trying to build minds, right, with the HAL Foundation, and that has been sort of like their core, I guess, competence with young people. Yeah. So now I want to get you a little bit of your perspective on that, Yvonne, with regards to young people. Because when people think about family planning, they're thinking mother, father, so the adults involved, and then maybe younger children. Now, there are young people who are also members of families. So how, if you could maybe, I want to just get your perspective on what ways they can benefit from learning about family planning, just them as young people. What do you think?
Yes, first and foremost, we need to understand that even the issue of family planning largely, in Africa, is a normative issue, in the sense that, even those who you think are well informed and educated, still find it a very controversial issue. Like you said earlier, usually goes left when you have these conversations. But I do know that children tend to suffer, in families where these things are not considered and put in place. You have even in environments where you have, for instance, maybe the father is maybe engaged in a blue-collar job, for instance. So let's say maybe he's a driver.
Maintenance kind
of
yes.
person. And perhaps the mom maybe is a petty trader or maybe a cleaner or a nanny somewhere. The children at home tend to suffer for these poor or ill decisions of not, planning their family, as a life plan. I look at the life plan aspect of it as, considering your economic conditions and situations. So these kids, of course, tend to suffer because they now have limited resources that has to be shared amongst too many children that can be catered for.
Right.
So what we do with, in such situations is, it becomes, like she said, a mental issue for these kids, but they don't even realize that, they're actually going through this because they don't have the awareness. So what we try to do, is create platforms where they can be mentored, and also spoken to, not to make the same wrong decisions. Of course, being very subtle about it because you don't want them to begin to look at their parents, as people who made bad decisions and
right.
who cannot,
who couldn't take
be
care
looked
of them,
up to.
right.
Do you understand?
Yes,
But we try to say, okay, you know what? What's your story? What's your background? What's your situation? Okay, but you can come out of this, and this is what you can do. It's either you decide if you want to go further in your education, so that you can get
to give you options
that tertiary, yes, or do you want to do vocational studies or learning?
That's an option as well.
But listen, little ones, the fact is that you need to get yourself together first. Family, growing or building or making is here for as long as it's lived.
Yeah.
I mean, people, we know what's going on in the world these days. People are even considering options like surrogacy, adoption. They're no longer taboos in our culture, So focus on you.
Right.
Try to build yourself. So we'll mentor them to build themselves. Good. We have a series where we call Be Me. It's called a series where we get, influencers such as yourself once every year to come and just talk to them. We try to go into those communities where we know these concerns are not at the forefront because they don't even know it's a concern that should be considered.
Right.
So we try to get them together and just teach them to try to rise above their immediate condition and begin to think of how they can have a better future for themselves. Because like I said, that's a subtle way of approaching this, because you don't want them to begin to look at their parents as having failed them at that young age.
Right.
Then you create dysfunctionality in the family. So that's what we do.
Well, very, very well said. Very well said. So now, even talking about that, now that takes us into our next question, which I'm going to throw to you, Onyinye. We read that just this year, because we try to do our own research on the show every now and then when I can. I go and browse the internet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just this year, a UN report revealed that Nigeria accounts for about 34% of global maternal deaths. In 2008, it was about 14%. Now, this is an alarming number because of lives lost due to childbirth. What role has family planning played in these numbers, do you think?
Sadly, based on this statistic, it shows that we're actually there's improvements in maternal deaths, but still there's a long way to go. And family planning basically helps us avert maternal deaths around the world. So when women are using family planning methods, also known as birth spacing. So that's the other thing I should mention. With young people, we talk about life planning. In particular cultures and regions, we want to emphasize it's about spacing your births. So when people are using family planning methods in Nigeria, women are able to allow their bodies to heal from a pregnancy, and that way they don't lose blood if they take in too quickly, or they're able to even have healthy children. And we also know that family planning also reduces the number of high-risk pregnancies, so it ensures that women are not having premature children and other risks that are associated with pregnancy. And then the other thing I should mention is access to family planning also helps prevent unwanted pregnancies. In Nigeria, we know abortion is illegal, but we know that young people especially are having unsafe abortions. When young people have access to family planning methods, we get to reduce and even prevent the number of these abortions, and also ensure that they have access to safe deliveries and safer options to navigate their reproductive health decisions and choices. So yes, I would say family planning contributes to maternal health because it helps us avert millions of deaths every year.
Okay, thank you very much. So, and then I'm gonna get a little bit of your perspective on this question, Yvonne, because you know you deal with youths especially, but when it comes to family planning, maternal deaths, it affects women a lot.
Yes.
Now, the question is, do you also get to work with like fathers and the men when it comes to, just as a general, just talking about these kind of issues that affect women but also affect children? Because the men are, sometimes they are the people who make or break, or they say yes or no, right? So what kind of work are you doing towards that, and what is your perspective as well on that?
Okay, so I'll be honest, we don't really deal too much with the fathers because, you know, we have our objective, but we had instances and situations wherein, you know, if we get particular cases, we need to speak with the parents, particularly when we see that this youth is suffering, you know, because of, you know, some, you know, background or foundational issues from the home. You know, it can be quite difficult because they wonder who you are, what you do, why you're interfering, but we try to reach them somehow. I mean, we've had instances where, you know, the parents actually come back to say thank you, you know, we saw reasons with what you said, and we're trying to make adjustments because our focus is actually on the youth. If you recall, I said, you know, we try to pursue the underserved. Yes, you know, there are a lot of foundations who do a lot of work, you know, in terms of creating interventions. But, you know, the Nigerian youth, particularly, or I would say the African youth, we feel are not getting enough attention as they should, you know, as a core, you know, of an objective of, you know, a social impact, you know, entity or group or foundation. So we really focus on the children. We only tend to, you know, begin to extend into the families if we either want consent, maybe to get them to, you know, partake in a particular project, or because, you know, the child is struggling, not only because, you know, of their social standing, but because the parents also have a lot, you know, to do with, you know, those challenges that the child is meeting. But all in all, though, I would say that generally, people who need help are actually open to get help. But there's always a brick wall we meet.
Sometimes.
Which is, you know, mostly cultural.
Right.
The issue of family planning, for instance, is very normative. You don't want, if you go into, like, you know, the very rural communities, a lot of them are having more children because, for instance, some particular states in the north, they are sending them off to maybe Lagos or Abuja or Port Harcourt, the cities, as house helps, for instance. So some of them actually do that because, you know, they expect to gain, to actually basically some kind of human trafficking. They don't even realize that, you know, they're actually trafficking their kids, you know, as an act of modern day slavery. They think, okay, she has to
She's going to work to make money,
to
for
bring
the
money.
family.
Yes, I mean, I've had encounters with parents, and I say, why are you doing this? Madam, we'll go chop. We'll go chop. We don't get money to go school. Make she go learn work. I said, but she's not learning work. She's actually slaving. Yeah. This child should be in school. In fact, what we now did as an organization is we partnered with Access Bank and UNICEF in Kaduna. We know what the Amajiri issue is in Nigeria, and we've partnered with them, and so far, over the course of the years, we've trained 13,000 children.
Oh, nice.
In at least, you know, primary school. Let them learn to at least do the basic reading and writing. These are kids that would ordinarily be on the streets or would be in homes begging, you know. So that's what we basically do. We try not to get into conflict and confrontation with you know, the parents, the moms, and the dads.
So now, very quickly, going back to you, Onyinye, with FP 2030, we know that it's a collective of world governments and stakeholders in the health sector that are focused on family planning. Can you talk a little bit about their goals and objectives and, you know, just the framework and implementation of the resolutions?
Yes, thank you for that question. And I should say that We are now FP 2030 because we're formerly FP 2020. That was Family Planning 2020. And basically in 2012, there was the London Summit, and countries across the world made a commitment to ensuring that 120 million additional women and girls have access to family planning. But of course, we're now in 2022, so we had to assess how well did we do with the 2020 goal. And we also realized that there might be some challenges in having a numerical goal. We were able to achieve over 60 million new users of family planning, modern family planning, but we realized that there might be some rights and other issues around having a numerical goal. So now the new FP 2030 partnership, which was launched last year, it's our goal, the vision that we see is a future where women and girls everywhere have the freedom and ability to lead healthy lives, to make their own informed decisions. Informed decisions really matters, but you have to have knowledge, you have to have information to make that informed decision. Yeah, so we want to ensure that women can make informed decisions about using contraception and having children, and also that they're able to participate as equals in society and development. So you mentioned that we gather health sector stakeholders, but we're also realizing that there are other stakeholders that need to be brought on board, because family planning is really about social, economic, and human capital development. So who are the stakeholders? So including like ministries of finance, ministries of education, ministries of women affairs.
Like the Herbert Wigwe Foundation, like Yvonne, like, yeah.
So now FP 2030 is now open to anybody and in any country that wants to say we are making a commitment. And that commitment can be financially. We want to ensure that girls can go to school because we know that education and family planning are interconnected. Or we want to invest in having access to contraceptive methods, or even increasing condom access for young people. So countries can make a financial commitment. They can also make a policy commitment. I know many times we see policies, but the issue is implementing those policies. So our partnership really works with countries to identify what kind of commitment can you make realistically for your country. And we work with them to ensure that they are monitoring their goals, they are monitoring their progress, and we're also providing technical assistance that might be needed for any country and any civil society group. So we have countries that make commitments. We also have civil society organizations. We call them we consider them non-government groups that can make a commitment, because we believe that everybody can make a change when it comes to family planning. So we really work with multiple sectors and multiple countries to advance the family planning agenda.
I wanted to ask you real quick, before we take our last question, where I'll get both of your perspectives. The final question for you, Onyinye, is how do you measure the success of the programs or all of your interventions? How do you measure how successful or not successful they are in order to maybe make amendments or whatever it is you need to do to make them successful? So what are those parameters that you use to measure?
And I think this is a fantastic question, because if we're not measuring, then what is the point? And how do we even know that we're actually making a dent when it comes to getting more people to be aware of family planning and to use it? So at the FP 2030 partnership, we have various themes, and we have a measurement framework. Actually, we have our data team that works with multiple stakeholders to collect data from every country. And because of this data collection that we've been doing, we've been able to track funding, like increases in funding. For example, I work as the officer for Anglophone Africa. Nigeria is one of my countries. So we're able to see, has Nigeria fulfilled its commitments? They said you're going to ensure that $4 million are budgeted for family planning commodities. So we track to see, okay, how much of that money has been released and how is it being used? And so we do that for all countries. And then we also have been able to see the usage of family planning methods. So we know that there are so many different kinds of methods. And that's where I think young people sometimes get confused. Which method should I use, whether it's a condom, an IUD, an implant, an injection, a pill? So, but we want to make sure that there's a diverse range of methods, because that's also part of promoting a rights-based approach. You don't just want to tell people use a condom. Condoms we know there might be issues with it, or just use a pill. So we don't want to tell you which method to use, so we want to give you options. So we have been able to track countries that have been able to improve their method mix. And then also supplies. I think COVID pandemic showed us that some commodities might be delayed during pandemics. So we work to ensure that countries can navigate the supply issues and the supply chain. And we have the data team that really tracks how well are we doing, ensuring that countries have the supplies that they need. And then even things like service delivery. One thing we noticed when we had FP 2020, back when it started in 2012, the countries that committed, many of their commitments did not address young people. But now with all of the FP 2030 commitments, all of them, like it's a requirement that you have to tell us what are you doing to address the issues, the family planning needs for young people in your community. So yes, I would say that's how we track our success, through engagements with country ministries, and also our data team. We have a network of data collectors.
Cool. Now, I'm just learning so much, and with all of these episodes that we've talked about on Her Matters, we've always been addressing family planning. Now, I wanted to this is the final question, and I'm going to get both of your perspectives. Of course, I'm going to start with our in-studio guest, and then I'll come back to you, Onyinye, for your final answer, and then we know that we're done with this episode. So, Yvonne, I wanted to ask you, finally, now the general impression of family planning, especially in Nigeria, is that it is asking to regulate childbirth. What
Population
do you
control.
Exactly. I think that's what people think when they hear it.
Yes.
What do you see as a better way to approach the subject, one? And I mean, just understanding the suggestion and regulation of it. So how much of a better job can we do talking about this subject, especially when it deals even with, like you said, young people, because they are literally the ones that are coming up to govern us. So we need to make sure that they are good, right?
Exactly.
So how do you think?
Okay, so what I love most about this topic is, when you say, what's the percentage of family planning as life planning? I would come from, that's, the life planning of itself. I think, first of all, you can't regulate, like you rightly said. It's a normative issue here, and I think generally in the world, particularly we know what's going on in the States, with the Republicans talking about,
Roe versus Wade.
And then there's this term they use, they call it replacement theory, where they feel, the whole idea of Democrats wanting to ensure that their abortion rights is because, they feel like the whites are not as reproductive as the other races. You've heard those things, so,
I can see, when we're smiling like a chicken head, like, oh.
Yes, then when you come to Africa, it's a function of, in Africa, we don't count our children. When a man is asked how many kids do you have, he doesn't say I have 5, 6, or 2. He says I have several children. So it becomes, it's a very cultural issue. So we always want to, address it from, creating awareness, let's create more awareness, around these issues by letting people know that, when you have to measure your responsibilities with your resources. If, for instance, like I have a friend who say, man, school fees is a contraceptive.
School fees is a season. Because there's rainy season, dry season.
Yes, and it's a contraceptive. Because these days,
wow.
It's true. I used to have a friend, and I find it so funny, but it made a lot of sense to me. Because if you want your kids to go to like the best schools around, they don't come cheap. And if you now want to say, okay, I want them to go to maybe one of all these schools, around with other international schools where their fees are in millions per child a year, and you earn X amount, and with your annual revenue, even both as a couple, if a single parent, we have to start letting people know, even down to the grassroots level.
Yeah.
You're a driver guy, you're earning 50K a month. You can't afford
with 8 children.
With 8 children, how are you going to maintain them? Please let them have that sense of human dignity. So that's our perspective as an organization. Education, awareness. Let them begin to understand that this is not we telling you. I mean, if you can afford to have 100 children and you can take care of them very well, why not? Nobody's going to stop you. So that's the perspective we are coming from. Nobody's going to stop you. However, please be fair to your children, because our concern are the youth. Birth them and groom them and nurture them in an environment where they have all, they experience all of the general, indices of, their hierarchy of needs of life. So that's our perspective. Like you rightly said, is it regulatable? I don't think so. So that's what we do. Just, the life planning aspect. Plan your life appropriately.
That's right.
Yes.
So, of course, now I'm going to go over for our final word. Onyinye, can I get your perspective on that?
Yes. So I think just to add on to what the other guest has mentioned, just let's be realistic about what we can do as families, as communities, as countries. So, for example, Nigeria has 200 million and counting number of people in terms of population size. And 70% of our population, I say our because I'm a proud Nigerian, 70% of our population are under the age of 30. So we need to see family planning as a socio-economic and human capital development agenda. Like it's not trying to regulate the number of children you have. We're just saying, how well are we taking care of the children that we have presently, the children who have now become young adults and adults, before we start bringing them in? I think it's so interesting to think about, the guest had mentioned in families, when parents cannot care for all of the children they have, it becomes a mental health challenge. So let's think about the problems that we're introducing into this world when we're not planning our families. So I just want to say, for people that think it's about regulating, it's not really about regulating. Of course, God blesses us. He has also blessed us with knowledge and resources to ensure that we live our fullest life. So Nigeria with 200 million, how are we doing right now? Look at unemployment rates. Look at access to health care. So look at what the pandemic has done. If the people we have right now don't have access to live their healthiest life, like, why shouldn't we be thinking about how can we ensure that we are actually planning the lives that we want? So I think that's just what I would say. It's really about just thinking about, what is your vision for your life? What's the vision for your family? What's the vision for Nigeria? Yes. And family planning is a great way to get us the country, the healthy country and the prosperous country that will reap the demographic dividend, definitely.
Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you so much for being here. This has just been so enlightening. I'm learning so much on this whole series, I can tell you. And here you guys have come again today with another learning. So even I, Chigirl, I'm learning so much when it comes to family planning. What I thought I knew, I really don't know. And I'm even unlearning some of the knowledge that I have in my head. So thank you, ladies, so much for being with us. Thank you for your time. Thank you. And I just wish you good luck in your endeavors, and keep doing what you're doing. We're proud of you. Of course, Yvonne is here. We're proud of her, but she's on ground. So I can't hug you because you're there. Yeah. So thank you guys for being here.
Thank you so much. Virtual hug.
And that's it for this episode of Her Matters. We would like to say a very big thank you to our principal partners, Worthy. We want to say thank you to the Herbert Wigwe Foundation that gives us this beautiful space to do our recordings. And of course, we want to say thank you to the Hasty Health Initiative. Thank you all for joining us. Take care of yourselves and be safe.